The spin from politicians is that strong jobs growth is a result of their great policies. And the RBA often says they deliberately kept interest rates lower to try to protect jobs. Given the way the economy is set up, it is certainly true that those in work tend to be a fair bit better off than those out of work. After all, government support for the unemployed is at best spotty and limited. But the consequences of these policies are having a frankly disastrous impact on both inflation and interest rates, which in turn is putting more pressure on households as net real incomes decline, partially thanks to higher taxes to cover higher government debt and as a greater share of income goes to chase higher home prices and rents. Governments always, of course, have choices, but the bias is to spend more and bigger. In addition, we should note the disproportionate share of current procurement contracts for defence at $58.7 billion relative to, well, almost everything else. And recently, Defence Minister Richard Marles announced a big reform in defence procurement, except it wasn't a big reform, rather a rearranging of deck chairs, as former Senator Rhett Patrick reports. The biggest problem that defence has, and which Miles doesn't have the ability to solve, is the fact that the very senior uniformed people who are running defence acquisition, while undoubtedly being good war fighters, don't have the experience in project management to understand that it is risk that brings down projects. Actually, the article in the AFR from Chris Joy that I covered on my show yesterday highlighted the challenge for the monetary policy mandarins because politicians are pumping the economy full of more and more unproductive cash, crowding out private activity and driving actual inflation a lot higher than it would otherwise have been. And as he said, the brutal truth is that interest rates in Australia would be significantly lower were it not for this pork barreling. The advent of the pandemic opened the door to untrammeled cash splashes. The RBA has to wear some of the blame in this respect. It was the central bank that enthusiastically encouraged federal and state politicians to borrow and spend as much money as they could during the shock as a form of insurance against extreme downside scenarios. And with the RBA under the cosh, federal and state politicians have become wizards at placing more and more population on the public purse. So the question is, are you really going to vote for less public spending when you are personally profiting from it? Joy concludes, if we want to avoid interest rate hikes, we need to dramatically pare back public spending. We need to back our people rather than the politicians to power prosperity in an extraordinary competitive world.